11th, 2014, and we're having animal communication session with Teddy. All right. So, Vicki, you said Teddy's approximately, at least your guys' best guess, 13 to 14 years old, male cat. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Is he neutered at this point?
He is. He was caught in a TNR program and had never been neutered. So, yes, he was neutered on the 27th, I think, of April. So it's a fresh neuter.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. So let me go ahead, and I've got his photo in front of me. Call Teddy in. So, Teddy, please. Wow, okay. So the first thing he says to you, Vicki, is he says he loves all this attention. This is attention from you. This is physical care. Calls himself a very nice, swell guy. His personality is that of a soft kitten, even though when you look at his picture, he looks a little, because of his ears, etc., he looks a little rough in upkeep, as far as his coat and all that. And yet he says he's a sweet guy. He says my outer shell doesn't match my inner shell. He's also telling me the care that you've provided for me, he feels a lot better. His skin also, he's telling me, doesn't feel nearly as tight. So explain to me more. At one point, his skin felt very, I'm going to describe it as almost like very dry. If you as a human have ever had extremely dry skin, it's to the point where it almost feels itchy, and there was a matted effect, too, in certain regions. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So he's been, according to him, clipped in different locations. I get he's talking about his fur, so you guys might have had to shave away some fur here and there.
Yeah.
He doesn't mind his new look. He feels a lot more comfortable in his body. They cleaned me up, is what he says. He looked really, I'm seeing his photos now, and he looks, according to him, far better in these photos I'm looking at than when he first came. He was dirty, and he just undernourished.
Just
didn't
go to the
feel
end of the
very
page.
good.
You'll see his first ones. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
He was really gruffy looking. Yeah, and very dehydrated and emaciated. He's put on some weight this month and is doing much better.
Okay. He brings me, as you mentioned, the emaciation too and the dehydration. He brings me immediately to his kidneys. His kidneys were under strain at the time that he was brought into the program. I get they feel much more normal. Okay, as if they've balanced out, and that's because he's getting enough fluids to hydrate his body, and so it's not putting a strain on his kidneys anymore. He does feel that you're pretty accurate on age. He puts himself at the age of 14, specifically the number 14, and he says, I've got the teeth to prove it, and he chuckles.
Yes.
Quite honestly, he just says he's very comfortable being in the living space that you've provided. He tells me he's a no-nonsense cat. When I ask him, what do you mean by that? He says, I'm not here to cause any trouble. I'm not creating any nonsense. I'm an easygoing cat, and he just says he's not complicated. He tells me he's okay and shrugs his shoulders like, I ask, how are you with other cats? He shrugs his shoulders and says, I'm okay with other cats. He seems to have great ease with being with others. I don't get an aggressive nature towards him and wanting to pounce or stalk, or he quite frankly doesn't feel like he has the energy for doing any of that anyway at this time, but I don't really get it's his nature. With that said, if he had to hold his own, and he did have to on the streets prior to the trap, release, neuter, event happening to him, he just says he would stand his own, and he had been in fights in the past. He does tell me now, Vicki, I wasn't meant to be on the streets. Okay, tell me more about that. He was somebody's house cat.
Yeah,
beloved house cat. He used to come and go from their yard. He was allowed inside. There was a rainstorm and thunder. According to him, that happens a lot in your particular state. I'm on the West Coast, so I don't know much about your state's weather.
Yeah,
but he says that happens quite a bit.
We have frequent bad weather,
Okay. According to him, he's had to be careful of where the rivers run. I'm getting he's talking about, as odd as it sounds, like flash flooding and things like that, of water rising. He shows me being concerned about having to just worry about things like that. All right, so tell me more about your past. So you were owned, and then what happened? Well, his people stayed where they were. He says, I got lost. I wandered too far. He had been coming and going from his people's house. Oh, I see what happened. Thank you. And he had been coming and going freely for, I get years. This cat was very well loved. He had multiple people, multiple caretakers. I got a male and a female who were caring for him. They had a very nice big backyard, and he was allowed to have the freedom to roam. And he actually had a pretty darn good homing instinct and could come and go back, and, he could find his way home. So when I asked him what happened there, a few moments ago he gave me a car, and told me I got transported away. Somebody picked him up at one point because he was a nice guy. He's the type of cat that if you were to call him over as a stranger on the sidewalk, he says he would have come over to you.
Yeah,
he's just
I think
that
he
friendly. And somebody picked him up thinking he was a stray. He couldn't convince them otherwise. They put him in a cardboard box. They transported me away. Then what happened? They tried to keep me, and I got out of their house, and I tried to go home to find my mom. He's referring to his human mother, female.
Oh, yeah.
And I got greatly lost. I couldn't tell. He got transported. It feels like 5 to 7 miles away.
That's so sad.
He could not reorient. He's telling me he was frustrated. He spent much time. Wow. He spent 6 months out on the streets on his own. Much time out on his own. People would leave food out, and he would come and go. Somebody was feeding him for quite a time.
Yes.
And then another cat actually chased him away. Feels like it was, he shows me the image of a dark, short-haired tiger cat. He ended up coming across a colony of cats, a group of cats. He gives me the number 5, like there were like pretty much 5 of us. Are you including yourself in that count? He says yes. So there's some outdoor cats that were roaming back and forth at some feeding station. And there was one too many. And at that point, it was like people decided to go in. He knew what a trap was, so he allowed himself to get trapped.
Well, we don't think he would have made it outside much longer had he not been trapped.
Well,
so
no,
he
wasn't
probably looking for
getting
help.
enough food. He wasn't getting enough food. He was, slowly declining. Were you looking for help? He says yes. I didn't know what else to do. To him, a trap was like a carrier. He's been transported in carriers before, and he's actually rather, uncharacteristically of cats, okay being transported in a plastic carrier. He doesn't he doesn't fight it, or he's a little nervous, but that's about it. He's really generally pretty good in a carrier. So what happened after? What were you hoping for, actually? That they would relocate me back to Mom. It didn't happen. Nobody knew my name. Nobody knew my name. Nobody knew my address. How are you doing now emotionally regarding all that? He's come to terms with it. The first 3 months of him after he was transported away and he does say there were nice people who transported him away, picked him up off the street. They had their heart in the right place. It just wasn't, he was not lost. And he looked good then, so he doesn't understand why they plucked him or picked him when they could have picked another cat. They just think he was easy to pick up, and so they just decided, let's keep this one. He wishes none of that had happened. But the first 3 months, he was actually in a difficult place emotionally. He got sick a couple times with an eye infection, he's telling me, when he was out on his own on the streets. He had a cough for a time. He's stronger now in his body. When I take a look at his lungs, feel how they're doing now, they're greatly improved from when I feel he was stuck in the spring, he says, with the spring rain and the spring weather. And again, he's showing me, he calls it flash flooding. All I'm seeing is a lot of copious amounts of water running on a sidewalk.
We do have flash flooding in our area in the springtime, yeah.
Oh, okay.
From thunderstorms. Okay. There are areas in town that are frequently under flash flood warnings, so that's very likely.
In a town, okay.
Yeah, wooded areas within the city, and there's a lot of creek beds and stuff that get overwhelmed with heavy rain.
Okay. I'm just not used to that from where I'm
from. Yeah, so that is likely in our area.
All right.
Gosh, I feel so sad about his first family. But, on the other hand, they let him roam outside and they never neutered him.
Yeah.
As a rescuer, that's kind of an issue.
Yeah, I can understand your perspective. I'm also hearing from him, even when he was unneutered, he was still sweet even then.
Yeah, I bet he was.
As far as emotionally, how are you doing now that you're at Vicki's house in foster care with her? So he is up for adoption?
Yes. Well, we think so, but, he's very likely he could live out his life here, too.
Okay. Well, he's very comfortable with you, quite honestly. And if you choose to keep me, he says, he would be totally A-okay with that. Because honestly, all he's going to do is just relax around the house. He doesn't have an awful lot of energy to be a very active, playful guy. And, you know, even some 14-year-old cats can be, but I don't get that within him. He just really wants to, like, from the inside of a house, look out the window, watch nature from inside the safety of a home. I get he'd be just as comfortable if you were to choose to, you know, walk him on a harness and leash. I don't get he would balk at that at all. You know, many cats would, but I don't get he would at all. He's very comfortable being outside. So if you chose at some point to take him out in the yard or set up a safety pen for him or something, he would enjoy having his feet upon the grass. But with that said, he seems quite comfortable and content inside. He tells me he's not meowing and begging you to release him outside. He's okay. He's doing all right.
He is.
If you were to give me my own home, in other words, find people who would care for him, he wants a quiet home. He's saying children. It's not that he's got anything against children. He's really a good-natured cat, but he's just looking for a quiet space. He just wants a comforter of his own. This would be like a blanket to lay on, anything that's soft. He doesn't need toys, he says at this point. The home environment, living with another cat, would you desire that? He says maybe. Depends on the other cat. I just don't want them pouncing on me. A kitten is not my cup of tea at this stage of the game in my life phase of being 14.
Yeah.
You know, multiple people, one person. He's just kind of in retirement stage is what he tells me. I'm taking life easy, he says. I'm done doing the hard work. He was very bitter, cold, and wet at a couple points. There was one, that's what started the colds back when he was out on his own on the streets. His eye was runny then. He had itchiness in one corner of his eye. He couldn't seem to get rid of the itchiness. Aside from that, this is all separate from the malnourishment. He discovered that cold, bitter rain in the springtime was like deafeningly cold, and I do. He went through a time period where he felt like an ice cube, okay? Not frozen stiff, but really cold because of the rain. It was not an adventure nor a fun one for me. Okay. So you asked the question to me to ask him via email, how is he feeling now? Let's look at how you're feeling physically these days. He's okay. His hips are very weak. They continue to be. In what way? I get he can jump up on things if he wants to, but he does not have the oomph power that he used to have when he was in his prime. To him, being in his prime was 5 to 10 years old. With that said, he just gives me a show of the muscles that are behind the upper thighs, the legs that, you know, are on the left and right side of the base of the tail, or I should say the length of the tail when it hangs down. And he just says these, I'll describe them as hamstring muscles, they are just very weak and very thin. They're supposed to be thicker. Part of that was due to malnutrition. They're also very dry and sinewy. He's got this feeling of, even though I know you're feeding him food, of course, and you know, food that I get is very nutrient-based, it's good for his body, he is still not hydrating to the degree that he really ought to be.
Yeah.
His body is just like so, it went through such a turmoil that its recovery time is slow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
He does tell me he likes canned food. Vicki, are you feeding him any canned right now?
Oh, constantly. He'll eat anything I put in front of him, yeah. He eats a lot of canned food.
Okay, he's grateful for it all. If you're not already doing so, canned food, of course, as you know, already has a lot of moisture content in it. So every time he eats it, he's getting some extra moisture in addition to the water he drinks normally. I would encourage you to add extra water to the canned food he's already eating because that just gives him a little bit more extra. Anything to help him would be helpful.
Well, and we did that for a while. He did have a UTI after he came. He went through a couple days of obviously not feeling well, and when we got him to the vet, that's what it turned out to be. So I did start adding water to his canned food, so he's getting a little bit more. I even gave him some sub-Q fluids about 3 times that 1 week, but that's not something I desire to do.
No, he wasn't crazy about it. Yeah, I see the tip of his tail, like you know how cats when they're impatient will kind of bat their tail at the tip. I see him being impatient, but with that said, he was tolerant of it. Tolerant of the procedure.
And pills, you know, we did medicines off and on. And he's going to get his teeth cleaned next month, so we're going to give him some antibiotics before that. He's got really bad teeth. And he's got a bad heart. Ask him about his heart, because I personally, as a nurse, think that's where his low energy comes from.
Yeah. The lack of nutrition had a direct impact upon the physicality of his body, but also on the physicality of his heart, is what he's telling me.
Yeah, I think he was just malnourished, and he's old enough that it's taken a while to come back.
Yes, and the malnourishment has taken a toll that, honestly, Vicki, he's not sure if he can recover from.
Yeah.
Not a full recovery. When I asked to what degree do you believe you have the potential to recover, he says, I'll get my strength back, but I'm still going to be a slow-moving guy, an easygoing guy. I mean, he's like a mellow, marshmallowy type cat. That's his personality
he's just
type.
an old man. That's how he acts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. He never runs up the stairs. He has to take them one at a time. But, I'm almost as bad, so we just walk up them together.
Okay.
Well, they had heard a loud heart murmur, and when they did a chest X-ray, they did see an enlarged heart. But his lungs looked good, so we're kind of going with probably cardiomyopathy or one of those chronic conditions.
Pain. There's no pain in the heart region.
Good.
When he's moving, locomotion, and is doing some sort of, more slightly, at least for him, he doesn't do much exercise, but as he's doing a little bit more walking around the house, it's not putting a strain on the physical heart. So
good.
He's actually had that enlarged heart. Well, he developed it while I was out on the streets.
Yeah.
So he had it before. Yeah, it doesn't feel acute or new. It's been there for at least 8 months, is what he tells me. But yeah, it really got more difficult for him regarding the malnutrition. It really influenced his heart.
Sure.
With that said, just FYI, his hearing, when I energetically go into his physical body to sense what he's sensing from his body perspective, he's got one ear that it's closed off. It's almost like the canal is collapsed in on itself. And it doesn't even matter, honestly, because even if the canal was open with the ear that I'm talking about and describing here, when I look at the eardrum, there's an image of it being like torn. So it's a non-functioning ear is what he tells me as far as hearing goes.
And I noticed that his hearing is not all that great. I mean, he can hear, but I knew it was diminished. And he actually has scarring on one of his ears, probably from one of those old fights. And it's like I can't remember the name of that little flap in front of the ear, is just been split in half at one point, and it is all curved in. So, yeah, that collapse is consistent really with his physical appearance. And I can't get eardrops in that ear, they just don't go down.
No. When I ask how's that ear feeling on a physical level, we're not talking about hearing anymore. It's all right. Honestly, believe it or not, it's actually dry in there. I don't get the feeling of ear mites. I don't get bacteria. I don't sense yeast. I mean, it really feels, dry in there. It hasn't always been. He has had leakage and seepage, he says, from inside that ear before. And I'm not talking about blood. He had an infection of some sort at one point internally. He's been treated, he says, a couple times, even by his own people prior to getting lost.
Yeah.
So
the vet said that it was probably very chronic in nature.
Okay.
The other ear's feeling okay?
Yeah, that one's much more open.
Okay.
The canal
good.
itself, he's got, some hearing, a little bit of hearing out of that ear, and that one feels good to him too. The only thing he feels on that one, it just feels a little tight on the internal section, but that's due to constriction and healing of how the cells have healed in the past as a result of past wounds. Even to that ear, it's not as bad as the other ear and not as ugly is how he describes it. And there's some tightness, but he's been dealing with it for a while.
Okay. Okay, good. He is FIV positive. He probably doesn't even recognize that as an issue because I'm thinking that's a fairly new infection, and he hasn't had any organ damage from it.
Okay, let me see. And I've met so many FIV cats that live long lives.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm not worried about that, except that he was immune compromised there for so long. Gotcha. So I'm personally hoping it's a fairly new infection because otherwise it could have gone full-blown, while he was outside and compromised.
Gotcha. So, Teddy, your awareness on how new or not, do you know He doesn't know. How are you feeling when you tune into the FIV virus in your body? It's not affecting me, is what he says. He's a carrier. Oh, thank you. Now he's telling me he acquired it 2 years ago from a bite in the behind by another cat. A cat sunk his teeth into him. He says sometimes I was the chaser and other times I was the chasee.
Yeah.
I've been more the one being chased. As I've gotten older, I can't run as fast. I can't scamper up trees. I can't jump very high. Can't jump very far. He says, I'm just ready, he says, to really enjoy my retirement.
Yeah, good. That's what we want for him. That's
good.
Exactly what we
other
want
questions?
for him.
What other questions for him, Vicki?
I think we covered most of the ones I had. I'm just feeling really bad about his first mama. You know, we knew he had to have been someone's baby at some point because he's just too sweet, although his nature itself is sweet also, I would say. Mm-hmm. But that makes me feel bad. But on the other hand, like I said, not only did they let him out and not neuter him, you know, he had all kinds of, you know, chronic problems. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's too bad, though, that somebody picked him up.
Yep.
That's kind of a sad
experience.
I don't know. I don't think that there's any way, really, that I would be able to locate his original family. He was not microchipped either.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm sorry, but families that let their cats do that lose their cats. And that sounds like what happened, so.
Well, he wishes the events had been different and he'd been just, you know, picked up and petted by the stranger who picked him up originally before transport and just had put him back down. That's what he wishes. He knew where he was. He knew home relative to that spot. He was used to be a couch potato cat, and in the sense that he would lay on his people's couch, and he was super affectionate with his people. And he tells me he continues to be that way. You know, he has yet to fully, he's very sweet, and he's got his guard down, but he has yet to fully connect with you. And the nice thing is, he doesn't have any emotional scarring or baggage, you know, that some cats under, you know, similar circumstances I've talked to will have. He's actually totally okay now emotionally. He's kind of worked through his emotions of his loss of his people those first 3 months when it was really tough for him, in part because he says he couldn't focus on that if he wanted to survive. He had to focus on his physical body and getting food and keeping out of trouble, avoiding the rain and avoiding dogs, and he just gives me a whole slew, a list of things. Even high winds. Apparently you guys experienced high winds when he was outside. This was, it feels like, I want to say like 2 months ago, a day of really high winds. But just know, he says I've experienced it all. You know, Vicki, if you do want him to bond with you more, even though I already see he's being very sweet with you, you can pet him. I see caressing. He likes to be pet, especially on top of the head, side of the cheeks. That is all very enjoyable for him. Not the ears, please, he says. Not the ears. He doesn't mind you inspecting his ears or people inspecting his ears, but then hands off, he says, just because the skin is tight because of how it's crinkled from what looks to me like past hematomas when I look at his picture. It's just, the skin isn't as flexible as it used to be, so hands off. Pet
and I do try to avoid those when I'm petting him, but he's very sweet to me. What can I do to help increase his bond with me? Okay, let me see what he suggests here. Tell me that I'm staying. The moment somebody, whether it be you or his forever home, tells him he is a permanent resident, he will totally relax. He's already relaxed, but he'll do it in such a way where now he can really settle in. Okay. Yep. And it's not going to take much other than those words, honestly, because he's ready for that. He's ready to settle in. Any idea of lifespan? Let me check in with him. Any idea of your awareness on lifespan? You're 14, according to you, so how many more years? He's not sure. He gives me maybe a year and more, question mark. So he thinks he's got at least another good solid year, if not more, because he does give me the plus sign beyond that. But he doesn't seem to have a sense of awareness beyond 1+ years. So there could be more, he says, and he shrugs. He's not too sure. Okay, but he doesn't. He says, I'm not getting ready to keel over anytime soon. He says, because I just discovered retirement, and now I'm taking advantage of it. He does tell me, too. And I so want to be there with him, darn it. Yes. I'm very jealous of that. I've still got a few more years till I can retire. I'm jealous of that.
Right, I hear you. You know, I'm also getting from him, Vicki, that he says he's trying out every soft spot that you've laid out for him. It's like he's testing them all out, and he says thank you for those too.
Yes, he has a lot of places to lay, but, you know, his first choice is the Amazon box down on the floor.
Amazon. He likes the texture and the feel of it. It's
Okay.
very fun for me.
Well,
yes, and he feels secluded and held by it.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. It's just the right size for feeling secure inside it.
Nice.
I was going to recycle it this week when I had company, but I decided I'd leave it for him.
Very good.
Wow.
He's very good with the litter pan too. He knows what this is. He's very conditioned to a litter pan. He has no problem using it. FYI, when he, if you end up keeping him, is the litter pan you've got now fine? It is, but much higher. If the lip of the pan you're currently using was much higher, he tells me then he would start to feel discomfort in his hips from lifting up his back two hind legs further to cover the lip. So if he does end up getting adopted by other people, maybe just share that with him. It feels like tightness changes, in the hind legs and in the hips in a way that, happens a lot of times with our older animals.
Well, and they've atrophied a little bit over, with his age also.
Yeah.
So I do have a fairly short box. I'm glad he's comfortable with that.
Yes, he can manage that, but not much higher. Okay, good. All right, anything else for him?
I don't think so. I think we covered just about everything, and you're just so accurate. I kind of posted that we were having a treat this evening, so now I have to go back on his page and tell him what we did. And, I hope I don't have any skeptic bashers. I shouldn't have. Most of these are, animal lovers and are not going to turn away from alternate ideas, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Very good. Well, let me thank him. Thank you, Teddy, for your time and energy, telling us your story. And may you have a wonderful retirement. Very good. All right, we are all set, Vicki. I will send you a link to the recording in 24 hours or less, and we are all set.
All right. Thank you so much, Danielle. You know how much I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You take care.
Okay, we'll stay in touch.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.